Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, today on Project Ruby, we're going to be working on hiding the windshield wiper motor. So as you guys recall, I smoothed the firewall, but I did leave the hole open for this big old ugly thing to stick through. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, and I kind of wanted to leave that hole there so it can help me figure out how to install this little guy right here. So this is off a 1997 to 2002 Jeep Wrangler. I'm pretty sure it's a Chrysler product, and this costs $31. Now the switch that we're going to need is from Newport Engineering. It's $105. So we can do this whole conversion for less than $140. Now there's a company out there called Rain Gear. They make awesome equipment for all kinds of years and makes and models of cars. But they're $800 or $900. So I think we can do that considerably cheaper, and it's kind of fun to knock this stuff out. So let's jump in and take a look at what our hurdles are going to be, and we'll just figure this out step by step. All right, since we're going to be using all the factory linkage and everything, we want to make sure that we use the same length of crank arm on the motor. So I took this one off the factory one, and I thought, oh man, how nice would it be if it fit right on the new one perfectly. Well, it didn't, but this shaft is slightly larger than this shaft. So all I had to do was file this out carefully, and it's kind of not a D shape, but it's flat with a round on each side. And I'm talking, it didn't take much. I think there was 20 thousandths difference on here. So I just carefully filed on it, and now it fits on there really nice. So actually it fits tighter than it did over on this one. So we got that part done. The second thing was to figure out what the wires all did on here. So if you happen to do this, and we'll go over all the wiring later, the black is ground, of course, the yellow is high, the green is low, the red is power in, and the white is intermittent and park. So, and these are touched together in certain ways to make it park. So I figured all that out. I got it able to rotate around, and I got it to rotate around to park. And that's important because when we align this and get it up inside there, this crank arm has to be facing exactly the right way. So when it parks, the windshield wipers land right where you want them. So we're going to cover that a little bit later. Unfortunately, it doesn't park in just the right spot, so we're going to have to modify this, but we'll get to that a little bit. Let's go over to the car and we'll see how this fits up inside there. Okay guys, I got you through the windshield looking down into the windshield wiper cowl area. Here's where the original motor went through, right here. So we're just going to kind of slide the motor up in here. It does fit pretty good, but you got to kind of rotate it and jiggle it a little bit. And it's going to go about, I've got a little chalk line in here, it's going to go about like that right there. So you can see the shaft sticking up right there, and we have to position it in such a way so when the crank arm rotates, it doesn't hit on this side, doesn't hit on that side, and the linkage arm will reach without interfering with anything else. So we will be using the factory linkage, but we will need to lengthen it to reach this crank arm because we're an inch or two away from the factory location. Plus we're going to be at a little bit different angle. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how we're going to mount a plate on here to get that mounted up onto this structure up here somewhere. I think we'll use the factory hole right here. I think that was an alignment hole. I don't think it was a drain hole. And then we'll probably mount it up in here because there's a recess right here. So if we drill a couple of holes here and put some screws or bolts, they're not going to interfere when the windshield wiper cowl gets installed. So let's go back over to the bench over there and we'll figure out how we're going to mount a plate on here. Okay, to mount the motor up inside there, we're going to use these 3 mounting lugs right here. They're drilled and tapped. I'm pretty sure it's metric. I haven't figured out what size it is yet. But as you guys can see, the offset of this arm, the way it's designed off the old motor, it would hit, right? So if we got a plate on there, even let's say it was 14 gauge, and we put a screw or a bolt in there, when this arm swings around, it's going to smack into all 3 of them, right? So that's no good. Now I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and cut these lugs down a little bit, drill and tap them a little deeper, and then everything will clear, no problem. But the issue with that is, let's say the motor goes out, in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. Then you buy a new motor, then you have to cut them down. You got to go through all that. And the thing is, this arm is not parking exactly where we need it. I think it needs to park over here a little bit more, and we'll figure that out later. So we do need to modify that arm. So what we'll do is, since we already have this, special cutout, filed out fit on there, what I want to do is just cut this arm off and just realign that. And so when we do that, then we can also fix this. So that little notch is closer over here and will clear, you know, our mounting plate and all our bolts. So I think that's going to be the game plan. So we're going to leave the motor as is, and we'll just take this arm off and figure out how to mount this in there, and then we'll figure out how to adjust that arm so it's parked in just the right spot. Okay, I've got this in here. I think this is about the angle and the spot I really want it. So we're going to go ahead and kick it on. So as you can see, it's clearing over here, it's clearing up over here. And the angle and everything doesn't really matter because as long as it's a linear motion going back and forth, and as long as we clear everything else, we should be fine. So I think we're looking pretty good. Now we have to figure out the mounting plate. So we're going to have to figure out a plate that's going to bolt onto the wiper motor, then come up here at an angle, and then bend and then attach up here somewhere, and then maybe attach over here in this mounting hole, or this, I think this was alignment pin when they were building the car, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's going to be our next step. Let's go ahead and get some poster board out. We'll kind of figure out what we need here, and we'll just kind of make it out of cardboard and poster board, and then maybe get a mock-up that matches what we've got going on here. All right, you guys can see I've got some poster board up inside there, and I've got it bolted to the housing, so it's in place. Then that goes over, and I've got another piece kind of close pinned on there with a 90 on it. Then I've got a piece up here on this right here, and it's bent to match this, and then go down at an angle, meet the other one, kind of close pin together. So, you know, I have to do it in multiple pieces to kind of reach up in here and make sure everything clears. So we got that half kind of figured out. The other half, I think originally I talked about going over to this hole. I don't think I'm going to do that. The windshield wiper cowl comes down right through here, so we can bolt right here and here, and then I think we're going to bolt right here and here. But the cowling comes down and rests right on here, so we'll have to drill and dimple die that. We'll just have to make something. That way the screws sit flushed right in here, so that won't hold it up. Right through this area right here, plenty of room. That thing kind of bubbles up over there. I can get my fingers in there, that's no problem. But yeah, so with that arm rotating through this area, we're going to have to make like a U-shape over, U-shape over, so it'll sit and straddle that arm as it swings around. Then we'll be able to bolt it here, 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 or here and here, and that'll give it, you know, kind of a square bolt pattern. Should hold it just fine and clear all the linkage and clear that arm swinging around in there. But yeah, so let me, I think what I need to do is make this out of something a little sturdier. And I do have a piece of old thinner can I cut up. So what I think I'm going to do is kind of make it out of that, and I can bend it with my hands and unbend it and bend it back, and it's going to hold its shape. And then I can kind of figure out, you know, at least this half of it, and then we'll figure out this half right here. I think this half is going to be easier. So yeah, I'll bring you back when I kind of have a preliminary mock-up made out of that really thin paint can over there. All right, guys, hours and hours later, I've got this piece made and just some clothespins holding it in place. I've got the plate made that goes on the windshield wiper motor, all out of tin, out of that old paint can. So I was able to bend it and kind of make it work. And then I have another mount right over here that comes down and over. Let me pull this out and I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, here it is. It's quite the contraption here, but I think it's going to work. So we won't need all of this right here, so we'll cut this off. I was trying to, you know, figure out some way of using this hole. I had something hot glued on there. It just didn't work. There's a brace in there. It keeps you from sliding that in. So I really don't think we need it. We do have this piece right here, and that bolts right here. And that'll be separate. That won't be part of this one piece. And so this is actually going to be 3 pieces. So we'll have a main plate for the motor, then this will bolt to it and bolt to the car. This piece will bolt right below where the windshield wiper mechanism attaches, then go down and it will either attach here, or I may make this piece all the way with all these bends in it, which is probably the smarter move. It'll come up, over, down, and around and flatten out, and then it will overlap this piece here and bolt together right there. I can reach it easily. That way all I have to do is bolt the main plate to the motor, Probably have some nuts welded on the back side, and then these other pieces will bolt to it and to the car. So I think that's it. Give me a little bit of time here. I think I need to kind of figure this out in one piece first, and then trim this up and kind of figure out, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I slotted these holes to kind of realign this. So now that I'm kind of closer, I need to kind of rethink my main plate where it hooks to the motor, get rid of all the extra sheet metal, and kind of clean this up a little bit. So I'll bring back in a bit, and I think we've got it. I'm not positive, but I think we've got it. Okay guys, I kind of jumped ahead a little bit, and I went ahead and made the plate for the motor. Now that's 14 gauge. Everything's going to be 14 gauge, and I've used little button head screws here, and I think that arm will clear them without having to modify it too much. We're just going to have to modify the park location, so we're going to have to tweak it a little bit, but that part is looking good. I went ahead and made, as you can tell, there's no angles on here, so like I spoke of just a moment ago, I've made this all the way down to here, down that angle and up a little bit, so the motor plate will just sit right on top of that. I also made this piece here out of 14 gauge. So if you look right down through here, you can see the plate right here. So that's the one, the big one, and then this other one is right here. But if you guys look, you can tell these are not on the same plane. So I need to bend this one up a little bit, bend that one up, and so this is a parallel plane because that motor plate will sit right on top of them. So that's the idea. And then of course, then it's going to be, there'll be a bolt through here and a couple of bolts over through here to hold that. And that should be sturdy enough. I don't think we need one over here on this side. So I've got a little bit more back and forth to the vise. You know, I've just been going back and forth, slowly tweaking these to get them to fit right and get that motor to slide in there and sit right on top of them. But that's where we're at. It's just a lot of hand fitting. There's no way to draw this up and make it work. You just kind of, you know, have to do what you have to do. You can see right here where I drilled out one of the kind of a welded in nut. It was in the way of that piece. So this whole piece will be cut out, and we'll weld that in at a later date to get that nice and smooth across here. But we are getting closer, so we can move on to getting maybe the arm realigned and then start working on the linkage. So I'll bring you back in a moment. I think we're pretty close to getting this all lined up, and I want to set it in there and see how it looks. All right guys, I have got it, I think. So I've got the windshield wiper mechanism in, and you can see it clears right there. A little squeaky, but it clears, no problem. I also had to raise up the motor a little bit. So this plate right here has a couple of welds right there. It's just tacked together. I had to cut a 1/4 inch out and raise that up to get it to fit and everything to line up inside here where we want, but it's starting to look pretty good. So this part I think is going to work. Now I was planning on bolting this piece right through here, but I think now I can drill and plug weld that in there and still slide the motor up with the plate on it. So I think that's going to work out. So that way all we have to do is just bolt it to the plate right down through there, and that'll cover it. We won't have to do anything special right here. Just drill it, plug weld that piece in, and then grind it smooth, and we'll be done. So I cannot test it with the motor running because those little button screws I had holding the motor on, they do stick up too far. So the next step I think will be to modify that crank arm, and so it'll clear everything, and then we can actually put some power to this thing, make sure it's all going to work clamped together. Some of the clamps have to come out of the way because the arm will hit, but I do want to get that motor spinning to make sure everything looks good before we do some final welding. All right guys, I got it all where I want it, and I got the arm in there. Now I did not modify the arm yet. I just put a washer underneath it just to space it up a little bit. It's still rubbing something, but we're clearing enough to do some testing. Everything's looking really good, so I'm happy. I'm gonna mark the locations of a few things and pull it all out of there. We're gonna take a look at it, and then we gotta weld some stuff up, and then we can put it in and start drilling holes for the mounting bolts. All right guys, here are all the parts. Now all that work just for these 3 parts, this one, and this one, and with their sheet metal counterparts. Now, I highly recommend you guys do stuff like this. The sheet metal way to go. We started off with paper, then I moved over to the sheet metal, and it allowed me to do a lot of bends and unbend and rebend but it works out really good because it holds its shape, and it allowed me to use that as my template, my guide, when I was bending this up, right? And this groove right here is because there's a little bracing, kind of a dent in that thing we're bolting this to, so I needed to make a little relief right there. I think the next thing we want to do is strengthen these right here. There's a little bit of stress on this as it holds the motor up, so I think we want to make some triangles right here and just weld them in on each side. We'll just get the TIG welder out and put those on, and then that'll be pretty much it. We have to do final weld on here to fix where I had to shorten it, grind that smooth, and then we are getting close to remounting it up in there, marking the holes, getting holes drilled, welding some nuts on, and then this portion should be done. So let's move over to the welding bench. We'll get this stuff on. All right, let's move on to some easy stuff. So I already welded that up and ground it smooth. This is still nice and straight, so we're good there. And I made these pieces up to fit right inside here to keep that from bending. So yeah, we're ready to get these welded in. I already got one tacked in place, so it's looking like it's gonna fit pretty good. So let's just get to welding. All right, that came out pretty good. I'm going to do the other side, and we are ready to sand that up and get it back in there and mark our final holes. All right, we got that all done. It's looking pretty good. So we're ready to mark the holes. Now I went ahead and drew this up real quick just in case somebody wants to try to reproduce it. It'll give you kind of a head start. So I'll just pause on these real quick. So that's the little bracket right here, and this is this piece here, and that's it laid out. That's all one piece right there bent around. So yeah, if you want to give this a shot, this should help. All right, so here's the main motor plate right here, and I've got a couple of 1/4 inch nuts welded to the back side of it that hold that little tab that goes up here that's just about to get plug welded in. So we'll plug weld it in right here, grind that smooth, and that will be done. Then the next step, once we've got that secured, I want to get this side secured, then I can drill through here and weld a couple of nuts on this piece, and then we'll drill through that piece down there, weld a couple of nuts, and then we will be secure. So let me bust that out super quick, and then we'll be able to mount the motor for the final time. All right, we've got them all done except the main plate, the motor plate. So I've got it vice gripped together to this piece. If we can pull it out without it moving, I can't drill it while it's in place, so we're gonna have to take it out carefully. Just like that. So now all I need to do is drill through both of these with a pilot drill, and then I can drill them out, weld a couple of nuts on the back side, and all the mounting brackets will be done. Okay guys, we had all the nuts welded in and the bolts are in and tight, and that thing is nice and solid as a rock. So pretty happy about that. I cannot get it to move. and I can access all the bolts from the top here. So if we ever, we need to take it in and out, we can just get it right through here, pull it out here, and we're good to go. So the next step is to put some power to the motor and get it to rotate around and park, and then we can start figuring out what we need to do with this arm right here. So the rest of it took quite a bit of time. Hopefully this will go a lot quicker. Okay guys, this is something I should have done at the very beginning, not 2/3 of the way through the project, but I needed to figure out where park was on all these linkages. So I put the old motor back in the park position, I put the arm back on it, I put it back in, there's a screw at the bottom, a clamp at the top. I attach the linkages back in and hook the arm to the motor. So everything is in the park position right now. Then I just took a piece of chalk and I drew a line all the way down right there. You'll see one there too that kind of lines up with that. But I did that on both of them. So when I rotate this around, I can line those up, and that way I know how long to make that arm or short or whatever to reach the new motor and everything else. Now the next step, now we've got that, I need to pull that arm off and we need to realign it so when it falls on the arm right here, these marks line up perfectly. Okay, we've got the new motor in, and I've got a straight edge going from the center point of the lever arm down there, and it comes down straight along here, straight through the center of the shaft for the motor, and I put a Sharpie line right across there. So that's going to give us our point where we need to get that arm aligned to. Okay, our next problem to solve is getting this arm to line up, the center of this line up with that Sharpie. So I've got the motor in park, I've got it on there. So what we need to do is cut this loose and rotate that around till that is lined up with that. And that measurement has to be from center of the shaft to the center of the pin, 1.70 inches. So we've got that mapped out. The other problem is, like we mentioned earlier, we just don't have the clearance right there. And these button heads are about the smallest head I could find. We could try to use a countersink, but unfortunately this 14 gauge is too thin. The countersink will still stick up, and then we have how we're going to lock it. We're going to use Loctite, which I don't want to do until aluminum, so we'll probably use star lock washers on there to keep that those screws from backing out. So we need to get this step right here closer to the shaft. So instead of trying to do this all in one movement, I think what we'll do is I'll cut this right at the step, and we'll move this back, maybe re-angle it at the same time, and then we'll cut it right here and then extend it whatever length we need to get to 1.70 inches. So let me go ahead and make a cut here, and then we're just going to use the step that's on here and then reattach it back here. I think I'm going to try to realign it at the same time. So I've made a little paper template here out of some construction paper, so we're going to kind of fiddle with that and see what angles we need to cut. But I'll bring you back right when we got it kind of figured out. All right, I think I just about have the first part here. So you can see we've got that lined up right with our mark right here. So all I need to do is go over to the welding bench and then get the TIG welder out and just tack it on 2 spots and see if we can't get that welded together. Then we're obviously way too short now, so we're gonna have to cut it here and lengthen it. But let me get the first part done, and then we'll move on to the second part. All right, we got that part taken care of. So on to step 2. So now we can tell that we are that much short. So all I'm gonna do is just cut square straight across here, make a piece, and extend it the amount we're short, and just weld it back together. So let me take care of that, and I'll be right back. All right, we got it all welded up, sanded smooth, filed, and we are 1.7 from center to center, and we are perfectly lined up. So I think we're looking pretty good. Let's get it back in there and figure out that arm. Okay, we're getting in the home stretch. You can see the linkage arm sitting on top of the rotating arm right there, and down there, I think we're going to have to put a little bit of a bend, because that's going to kind of rub on itself when it's moving. So we're going to have to do this incrementally, which means taking that linkage in and out several times. I think I can get it out without removing the motor and all the other brackets. I've done it before. So we're just going to have to inch up on this thing. Luckily, the linkage arm is too long, so shortening it's a lot easier than making it longer. And it's obviously designed to be on this plane. We need to lay it down like that. So it's going to take a little bit of back and forth, kind of undoing what the factory did and then figuring out what we need to do. But I'm going to go ahead and just start by doing a couple of small bends. If it'll bend, if not, we'll have to make some cuts and then bend it and then re-weld it. All right, guys, I realized there was a clip that held this linkage arm to that one, so I was able to undo it and take that off. So now it's a lot easier to get this in and out really quick. And I put a little bend down there just so when this pivots around, it doesn't rub on the mechanism down there. And then there was a little kink on this thing, you know, to kind of line it up to the old motor. So I just basically straightened that arm out in the vise. I just kind of put it in the vise, hit it with a rubber mallet, kind of kept bending on it. Didn't distort or anything. It came straight pretty well. So now you can see down inside there, I don't know if you guys can make that out, but we basically need to put a twist in this arm to 90 degrees. So that's going to be the next step. I think I'm just going to clamp that in down there in the vise and then grip it down on this end and just rotate it and keep testing it and just put a gradual twist in this whole thing. Now it is too long, but we'll get the twist in there, then we'll worry about shortening it up once we get that lined up on the same plane as that arm. Okay, I got the end of the arm just a little bit into the vise here so we can spread that twist over the full length. And you can see there's just a little bit of a little hoop to do right here. I didn't get it all the way out. We're gonna see if we still need that. So I'm just gonna grip it with some pliers here. And I got a little arrow so I don't twist it the wrong direction. I'm just going to see if this thing's going to take a twist here. Looks like it is. I don't want to do it just in one spot, so I'll make sure the twist is going over the whole area, which it looks like it is. Okay, I'm just going to go check it at the car, make sure this is on the same plane as that arm that's rotating around, probably a few back and forths until we get it just right, and then we can start thinking about shortening this up. Okay guys, we got a pretty good twist in that thing to get it to lay just right. And I bent the end down here so it lays on the pin. It just falls right on the pin really nice and doesn't bind anywhere. But now we're too long. So we got all the other stuff worked out. Now it's time to cut that thing down. So I got to get in there and get a measurement, figure out how much I need to remove. And I think what we'll do is we'll remove it down here. It's more of a straight area right here. It doesn't look like much, so we'll just remove a little bit out of there and then weld it back together, and we should be just about done. All right, it's working. Got a little squeak in it, but it's kind of rusty, so I think we can fix that. Let's park it and see if it lands right on the right spot. All right, let's see if the lines line up. Perfect, look at that. All right. Okay, I'm going to finish welding that. I just have it tacked together, the arm, and then we'll put the whole thing together and see how it works. All right, there it is. Everything's in, everything's working. Looks good. Nothing's rubbing. I had to tweak a few things here and there. They got a little close, but I think it's working great. All right, let's figure that switch out and call this one done. All right, guys, I got the Newport Engineering switch all wired up, and it seems like it's working good. Let's go right to high. Then low, and then to off, and it parks just fine. Now there is also a washer feature. When you push in, it'll energize this brown wire for your washer pump, and then it has infinite intermittent, so there's no clicks in here for that. So we're going to turn it all the way to the fastest intermittent or the shortest distance in between. And then there it goes. So that's the shortest it'll do. And then you just turn it back towards off, and then it's longer and longer in between each stroke. So that seems to be working pretty good, so I'm pretty happy about that. Now, let's get it to park here. And it goes right to park, so that's all working good. So the wiring off the switch is red goes to power, okay, 12 volts. Black goes to ground, of course. Then the yellow out of the switch goes to green on the Jeep wiper motor. The white out of the switch goes to yellow off the Jeep wiper motor. And then the blue out of the switch goes to white off the wiper motor. And that is the park feature. These are high and low right here. So green is low, yellow is high. But it's pretty straightforward, and it's working great. Pretty happy. and get this done. It's taken quite some work and some figuring to get this to work, but I'm liking it. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on getting a hidden windshield wiper motor on a GMA body, and we did it for $140, which is really nice. So we basically saved $700 by not buying a kit from someone else, and we retained all the factory linkage, and all we did was basically put a motor down underneath the windshield wiper cowl. Now, this did take a lot of work. This was a several-day project. I know this video is probably less than 30 minutes long, but it took quite a bit of work, and I'm really happy with the outcome, and I think it was worth it. But you know, this kind of stuff does take a lot of time and effort, but I'm really happy with the results. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one.